You can find that address in the chat box. Our first Inspire session of day 2 of the web conference is by Emma Pratt. Emma is the Director of ELTcampus with a background in museum and visual art education, ELT, and online teacher development. She's also a visual artist who has run an Artists in Schools program and residency projects on storytelling, as well as online drawing workshops for children. During Emma's session, we recommend watching in speaker view. Okay, when you're ready, over to you, Emma. Please share your screen.
Thank you very much, Kate. Okay. Okay. All right, well, I'm really hoping today that my presentation will take you somewhere different. Part of the objective of my presentation is to look at the kind of international environment that we find ourselves in as teachers, and look at what our identities are, our cultures are, and the kind of commonalities that we have, but also our differences. English teaching, we would hope, is no longer a colonizing or imperialistic act, but one of giving English language learners agency to tell their stories on a global stage and use a global language that is owned by no one and no class and no country. But yet the framework of our knowledge systems, where English as a language is often studied or researched or taught, is still Western in origin. And what I mean is the very fact that we have West or East as a concept is in itself a construct. It was, fun fact, developed back in 1493 by the Pope in Rome at the time. And Rome decided that it was the center of the universe, and everywhere from that point was either East or West. Now, my part of the world, during my lifetime, I'm from New Zealand, and in my lifetime, I have been lucky to witness the huge cognitive shift from a Eurocentric point of view of the universe to a viewpoint that's very firmly situated in the Pacific Ocean, and very specifically in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Even the name Aotearoa, that is actually the name that we call our country. Everyone else knows it as New Zealand, but its first name that it was given is Aotearoa, which means the land of the long white cloud. Now, my country came very close to losing its indigenous language and its particular view of the cosmos, but it has fought back. We realized late, but not too late, that for people to shape their own future, their own world, they need to have a voice in and have control over the frameworks that shape their lives. So we're talking about cultural formations, things such as the intersection of race and gender, where our bodies start and stop, the relationship between the individual and the group, or ideas of space and time, of up or down. The ideas of perimeters and how we classify things and put things in order. These are our knowledge systems, and there are many areas here where the cognitive center of our thinking and our traditional institutions is still very much hovering over Europe. And today in my session, I'm going to present to you a very small piece of knowledge from our part of the world. And the objective is to increase the dialogue that we have about our role as people, our role as teachers and learners, and how we are creating space for these different knowledge systems, you know, to have breathing space in our classrooms and in our practices. The first thing I'm going to do, I need to explain a little bit of what I'm going to do today. I'm going to open my storytelling with a set of very old names that describe what was happening before this present cosmos that we know of came into being. And it is, as you will see, very similar to the theory of the Big Bang and the expanding universe. And these are very old ideas that come from the Pacific Ocean. Also in my presentation today, you're going to hear the Maori language. This is because I can't talk about my part of the world without using Indigenous language, because it is the system that is used to describe the world as it is seen by the first people of the Pacific who inhabited the islands where I was born. And these are the islands that made me. So the first thing I will do is I will chant these old names. And then I'm going to go through formal greetings that we would use in any situation like this back at home. Then I'm going to talk about Te Moana Nui a Kiwa, the Pacific Ocean, and my role as a person telling stories from my part of the world and my responsibility towards being sensitive to the culture of my place. Then I'm going to tell you a couple of stories and then finish off with a traditional way of closing. This presentation today, and I'm very thankful for being given this indulgence, is a love letter to the first people of my country, to their dreams and knowledge systems, their way of seeing and beholding the world. Their nurture and their knowledge permeates me. And it is also a way of honouring my great-great-grandfather, who was a very great speaker of this Indigenous language himself, which we call te reo. And te reo, this language, is considered a national treasure in New Zealand today and something sacred. Less than 200,000 people speak this language in all of the world today. And less than 50,000 people can say that they speak that language well. I hope by the end of my lifetime that I might consider myself one of those 50,000. And I would hope that we will be more than 50,000 by that stage. So let's begin at the beginning of everything. Ko te kore. Te kore te whiwhia. Te kore te rawea. Te kore iai. Te kore te wiwia. Nā te kore te pō. Te pō nui. Te pō roa. Te pō uri uri. Te pō kere kere. Te pō te kitea. Te pō tango tango. Te pō whawha. Te pō namu namu ki tai ao. Te pō tahuri atu. Te pō tahuri mai ki tai ao. Ki te whai ao. Ki te ao marama. Tihei Mauri ora. Kia ora mai rai e nā iwi. Mako e mihi atu au ki te kaihanga, nāna nei nā mea katoa. Mako e mihi atu au ki nā maunga me nā aua. Me nā marae maha huri noa ki te ao. Ka mihi atu au ki nā mate, haere, haere, haere atu rā ki te matua tipuna. Ka mihi atu au ki ngā hunga ora, ki ngā kaiako mā. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa. I have just acknowledged in the way of home, where we come from and from whom we come. I have acknowledged this world in which we live, the mountains, the rivers, and the lands, the places where we dwell, the people who have passed on, those who have nurtured us all, those who encouraged us and passed on to us their stories, their knowledge, and onto which we will add our own layer. And finally, I acknowledge all of us here, the living. We, the living, are the faces of our ancestors. those ancestors who walk with us, the ancestors who are in our DNA and in our stories. And this is a typical way that we would begin any kind of meeting back at home in a traditional sense. I'm going to share with you now some stories of my part of the world, Te Moana Nui a Kiwa. The great ocean of Kia, this is the translation of what you're hearing there, is known as the Pacific Ocean to everybody else. And here you can see, this is a detail of a painting of mine that I did during lockdown here in the UK this year. And it is part of a series of work that I'm working on about oceans, and working with some children and others to make this into a learning resource for children at a later date. Let me introduce you to my part of the world. Here she is. This is Te Moana Nui a Kiwa. As you can see, it is so big that we can't actually see the entire ocean from one viewpoint. And you forget how big this ocean is, because living in Europe for the last sort of decade and a half as I have, I've become very accustomed to the maps being Eurocentric, meaning that Europe and Britain is right in the center of the world, which means that the Pacific Ocean is out on the edges. So you never really get to see our part of the world the way we do. Now, when we see this map or this part of the earth, the islands are so small and so insignificant that they're invisible. But for people of the Pacific, the ocean itself is a network of highways. Islands are like gas stations and roadside stops for canoe voyages. The sun and moon and stars, and of course the ocean currents themselves, are the markers for navigating this space. And the people are completely at home with this vast big blue. These voyages have covered distances that are some of the biggest human migrations that you'll find anywhere in the world. Now, the people who speak of Te Moana Nui a Kiwa are voyagers who possibly originated, we believe, according to language, if we follow through languages, they originated around Taiwan area. So that's over here in this sort of area. And they stretched out, traveling in canoes, or waka, as we call them, to the islands. And you can see just how far they traveled. So here we've got Hawaii there. And I'm going to draw for you a little triangle of what we consider to be Polynesia today, which is the language group and the different canoe voyages that came out from what we traditionally in New Zealand call Hawaii or Hawaii, but exactly where this sort of traditional Hawaii was, we don't know if it's necessarily the Hawaii of today. But here is the triangle. So it goes New Zealand, Hawaii, and out to Rapa Nui, which is Easter Island. So there you go. It's a massive expanse of water. Now, these places had their names, but subsequent waves of exploration and commerce and colonization almost wiped it all out. My ancestors came in boats in later migration. They were poor, desperate, and homeless, made their way across these great oceans, blind to how their culture would impose itself for good or for bad on another. So my role as a teller of our stories and knowledge, I have to take great care, because these stories I'm telling to you today are not mine. Now, this is what I mean. I'm talking about the issue of cognitive justice and colonization. This knowledge system that I marvel at and am enriched by is not my knowledge system. If I were to claim this knowledge and act as if I were part of it, I could argue that I am actually perpetuating colonization. My role when I deal with anything to do with this culture is that I am a vessel. I am a carrier of knowledge, and I share these stories that have been given to me to tell. And my job as the teller is to tell them respectfully and to tell them well. So in Aotearoa, I am known as Pākehā. Now, Pākehā is a Maori name that means literally being of another breath. Now, that doesn't mean I'm a greater breath or a lesser breath. I'm just of another breath. Breath is considered sacred in Maori culture and where I come from. And in Maori, we call it ha. Ha, breath. It's what keeps us alive. It's what helps us tell and chant and sing our stories and pass on knowledge. The formal greeting at home is the hongi. Now, the hongi is where you come together. You come together with someone and you press down the length of your nose against another's nose. You might hold each other's shoulder and you might press each other forehead to forehead too, as you can see here. And at this moment, your breath and the breath of that other person is mingling. It's a sacred space. It's a combining and joining moment. You are joined in sacred breath. Now, just to give some notes here, I might have to unpack some of that language there. Basically, this is Jacinda Ardern, and I just need to hide make my thing floating here so I can actually see. So she is meeting with an elder of a tribe in Taranaki, and they were commemorating some New Zealand war history. So not everything was smooth and easygoing in my country, and it still isn't, but the effort is there to try and make peace and make amends whenever we can. At the moment, naturally, for reasons I don't even need to explain, we're not really practicing hongi at home, but the symbolism is there for you to see. Now, when I participate, and I've participated in hongi a lot myself over the years, I know that I am joining in this moment with another person, but I am also always separate. I'm always Pākehā, and that means I'm separate from that culture. But as my mentors and my teachers have always told me, I am also gathered together with them and made one of their own. And so for someone like me in New Zealand, I live in a bit of a hybrid world of